Today, the United States stands as the wealthiest and most militarily dominant country in human history. It controls global financial systems, leads in technological innovation, and projects power across every ocean. Yet inside its borders, the country is tearing itself apart. Political polarization has gridlocked its government, and a deep, bitter identity crisis has fractured its citizens. This internal fracture stems from a massive, glaring contradiction present since the very foundation of the country. When the American colonies declared independence in 1776, they produced the most radical defense of human equality ever put to paper. They established a republic on the explicit promise that governments derive their power entirely from the consent of the governed. But that written promise collided with a brutal economic reality. The early republic fueled its growth through the systematic displacement of indigenous populations and the vast, legally protected enslavement of millions of African Americans. The American experiment rests on these two opposing realities. It is a nation built simultaneously on the highest ideals of human freedom and the ruthless mechanics of conquest. This map shows America's 19th century expansion. Through the Louisiana Purchase and Mexican-American War, the country absorbed massive lands to relieve financial pressures. But this pursuit steamrolled justice. With every new state, a volatile debate reopened. Would slavery expand into these Western lands? By 1860, the founding contradiction finally snapped. The resulting Civil War became a massive, all-consuming conflict over the country's soul. Preserving the Union and legally abolishing the institution of slavery required 4 years of continuous combat and the deaths of over 600,000 Americans. The war ended legal slavery, but did not resolve the tension between state power and equality. The battlefield merely shifted into a different era. Following the war, the Gilded Age saw the United States emerge as an industrial titan. Railroads stretched coast to coast, and steel empires generated explosive economic growth alongside extreme wealth inequality. As a handful of corporate elites consolidated immense fortunes, the working class organized to demand better wages and safer conditions. These efforts often met with violent suppression from both private security and government forces. Then, World War I pulled America firmly onto the global stage. Under Woodrow Wilson, the federal government pivoted its focus to international military influence. When German saboteurs destroyed 2,000 pounds of TNT in New York Harbor in 1916, President Wilson gave the Justice Department emergency war powers to arrest any resident deemed dangerous. It was a clear realization by the establishment that managing a global empire required the ability to rapidly suppress domestic dissent. As America's external might expanded, the federal government increasingly viewed the radical liberties of its own citizens as a potential threat to national security. By 1919, the country felt like it was tearing itself apart. Returning soldiers found no jobs, massive strikes paralyzed cities, and mail bombs targeted the elite. To crush these internal threats, the Justice Department utilized a young clerk named J. Edgar Hoover to silence radicals, creating the modern intelligence apparatus. This surveillance state utilized midnight raids, mass arrests, and deportations without trial, all justified by the claim that it was protecting American liberty. This security machinery exploded in size in the following decades, through the nuclear paranoia of the Cold War and through the War on Terror. It deeply embedded itself into everyday American life. It is the ultimate irony. The nation founded to escape tyrannical government control built the most powerful domestic security apparatus in human history. But the American public has always retaliated against systemic oppression and state overreach. In the 1950s and 60s, a new generation launched the civil rights movement. Through nonviolent protests and boycotts, they forced the world to witness the hypocrisy of Jim Crow laws. Marginalized citizens weaponized the ideals written in 1776 against the modern government, forcing the dismantling of legal segregation and the expansion of voting rights. These rights were not a willing gift from the state. They were concessions forced by organized citizens holding the country to its own promises. When the Soviet Union dissolved, the United States emerged as the undisputed unipolar superpower of the world. Yet, the digital revolution, and the post-9/11 era have resurrected the exact same historical battles over surveillance, civil liberties, and economic inequality. Despite its global influence, the United States remains trapped in a fierce internal struggle over who belongs and what freedom actually means in practice. The American experiment remains a fragile, volatile struggle, and its survival depends entirely on the choices of the current generation.